Good morning, Vietnam, or whatever. I don't know. Actually, I haven't seen that movie yet. This is Joe for Outside the Letterbox. I'm here with Nick,
Hey everyone.
and Paul is not going to be with us tonight because he has not seen the film in question, the film we're going to be talking about for the evening. So he's out having fun, doing other stuff, whatever Paul does in his off time when he's not talking about movies with us.
Which is not that much time.
So he's out there just well. In the off time when he's not talking about movies with us, he's watching all the movies he's gonna talk about with us. So yeah, he's not doing anything else otherwise.
This is a full 24/7 job that we do not get paid for.
I think that's pretty much what all of us do. I don't think any of us have any other jobs except for just this.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a lot of fun. Anyway,
And a total lie. I don't want people to think that we actually don't have jobs.
we don't have lives at all. All right, so movie news. We don't have a whole lot going in this week. We're
Wait,
gonna
wait,
talk.
wait, Joe, what's the film in question we're talking about this week?
The film in question we're talking about this week is the title of the podcast, which is above the video, or if you're listening to this on iTunes, it's the title of the podcast. We're going to be talking about Exodus: Gods and Kings, which opened up this past weekend. And
Exodus: Gods and Kings.
Exodus: Gods and Kings. And that was necessary.
I don't think it was either, but
Um, we don't have much in the way of movie news. We're gonna talk about a few trailers that have come out. I think there's like a couple trailers for some movies that came out that we actually haven't talked about yet. Actually, there's quite a few trailers actually that have come out recently, which I'm sure we'll get to. And we'll talk about what we've watched recently. If Nick's watched anything, I don't know. Have you watched anything recently, Nick?
I've watched a couple things. I saw what's it called? Scrooged with Bill Murray for the first time this past week.
Oh, I've been meaning to watch that. It's been on my Netflix queue since it was added on there.
Yeah, I didn't care for it.
I really know nothing about it. I'm just presuming it's a Christmas Carol with Bill Murray.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of darker than your usual Christmas Carol version, and I don't know if it's just like a Christmas Carol is probably like the most adapted film of, or story of all time. Like I mean, I can't think of another thing, even the Bible probably hasn't been adapted as many times as a Christmas Carol. Um, so anytime you kind of watch a new version, um, you want to see the same beats because obviously that's why you're watching it, but you want to see it do something else too. And this was a case where they hit the same beats, but it's kind of like, okay, been there, done that. But then they do it in a new way, and I just don't know if it entirely works. Also, like Bill Murray's kind of a weird person to cast as Scrooge because whoever you have in that role, you kind of have to hate for 95% of the movie. And then get into a position where you actually sympathize with them for the last 5-10 minutes. And I think Bill Murray, maybe not back when this movie was made, but definitely now, like, he's such a beloved figure that, like, even when he does bad stuff, it's like, oh, Bill, we kind of we hold him on this kind of pedestal compared to other actors. So I think that kind of works against him in the role. Again, like, maybe it worked better when it first came out, but I think watching it now, he's not quite like bad enough to be a bad guy, but he's not. He's still kind of a jerk. It's kind of
Yeah.
he's in this weird middle ground throughout the whole movie. So
Well, it's kind of like in most Bill Murray roles. He's your average, lovable, just kind of down to earth guy, and so even when he has his super dry sense of humor, every once in a while he'll do something really douchey, but you don't really feel like he's mean spirited about it. You're just like, oh, that's just how he is. That's okay.
exactly, and then so at the end when he has this big conversion or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't feel entirely honest, because it's Bill Murray. I'm not saying like Bill Murray, he's obviously like Lost in Translation or some of his roles in Wes Anderson where he's been more open and more emotional or whatever, and you kind of accept that. But it just didn't work for me here.
Yeah, that's understandable. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'll probably check it out at some point.
Yeah. I also saw, if since Exodus is a Ridley Scott movie, I saw Black Rain for the first time, which is I think it's from the '80s. Michael Douglas stars as a cop who goes to China or Japan. I really don't remember which one. I think it's
Wow. Nick is officially a racist.
I know. Um, Andy Garcia plays his cop partner. There are a couple cool scenes, like it's entertaining, but as you can probably already tell, I already forgot what happens in most of the movie. There is a really sweet death scene, but to say any more would really spoil the movie. That I remember. The rest of it, I kind of forgot.
Well, that's really funny because I was actually looking through the list of Ridley Scott movies recently. Again, in preparation for Exodus, I was thinking like, oh yeah, what are some Ridley Scott movies I haven't seen yet? And I happened upon, I think, on his IMDb page that Black Rain, and I had never heard about this movie. I consider myself somewhat of a Ridley Scott fan. I love a lot of his movies, but I haven't seen some of the bigger ones. Like I haven't seen Kingdom of Heaven yet.
So
Um,
good. So
but then
good.
but then this one popped up, and I was looking at that, and I was thinking, just based on the poster, I was like, this looks like something very different and interesting for Ridley Scott. And I didn't really read too much into it, but from what I saw, it looks like it's his take on '80s cop dramas, crime action films.
Well, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's not that far removed from Blade Runner, except it takes place, in the 80s and there's less rain,
Yeah,
Um,
it has a great poster. I'll give it that.
oh, yeah, him on the motorcycle. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so that's Black Rain. Probably, I saw Inherent Vice again. Um,
again.
again, I kind of want us to do a proper review at some point, but I don't know if we'll ever get around to it, especially since it seems to be like really slowly expanding. I don't think it'll really get out until January.
Paul or I will have seen it once by the time you've seen it 5 times.
Yeah, it was actually nice because there was like a month between each of my viewings, so I really had to wrestle with the movie the first time and kind of figure out my thoughts on it. And that was before like they released like a lot of clips or a lot of pictures, so there wasn't a lot of reference material for me to go off of. So it was nice to like see the movie a second time when kind of everyone else has had a chance, so then I could like actually see what other people thought. Uh, I think the movie is just as good, if not slightly better, the second time around. Because the first time around, it's really easy to get caught up in the plot, but the plot doesn't really matter. So you kind of have to just be like, just go from scene to scene. That's kind of the best way to approach the movie, which sounds like a terrible way to approach a movie, but if you're very familiar with like the film noir genre and especially like the types of movies that he's going for, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, I can't wait to see that one. Hopefully, it'll come to my area. If not, I might just have to drive up to LA to go see it.
Do it.
Although they did release a new trailer for it recently for a special screening, didn't they?
Oh yeah, actually that trailer I think is almost better and more reflective of the actual movie than the first trailer was. Like the first trailer is good, but there's still kind of a sense of like, oh, a studio cut this trailer together, with the intention of just getting as
Music.
cool as
Because that
possible.
song stuck in my head. It's so
Which one?
good. The first one did.
Oh yeah, yeah, the Sly and the Family Stone or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So great trailer. I can't wait to see that movie.
Yeah,
Hopefully, I'll
good
see it in
stuff.
theaters before it hits digital on demand, whatever people are,
Yeah.
whatever the kids are watching these days.
But yeah, otherwise, that was pretty much it. Although last night, I'm sure if Paul were here, we would talk a little bit more about it. But we were at a double feature of Dazed and Confused and Carrie. Or I should say I was for Carrie because Paul bailed after Dazed and Confused.
What the
But
hell, Paul Bell for Carrie?
yeah, I know. I mean, it was late, so I don't blame him. But it was kind of an interesting double feature because Dazed and Confused takes place in 1976 and Carrie was shot in 1976, and so they were both like high school movies from that time period. So it was really interesting just to watch two movies that you wouldn't otherwise have put together back to back.
Yeah, yeah. What the hell do Carrie and Dazed and Confused have to do with each other? Is it just the year connection is the reason they did that?
Yeah, and they both take place in high school.
They're both high school movies. One of them is about a psychokinetic killer at a prom or whatever. The other one's about stoners.
Yep.
All
but
right.
but both movies hold up really well. Days and Confused, I mean, that's like a top 20 movie for me. And then Carrie, like Carrie's a movie that I think I undervalue a lot, especially in terms of like horror movies. The last 30 minutes is some of the best horror filmmaking ever.
Yeah, I mean the last 3 minutes are great. I wouldn't consider myself a huge fan of Carrie, but I'm not. I'm not. I mean, I don't hate it or anything. as far as I'm concerned, the last 30 minutes is the most worthwhile thing about that movie.
Oh
But
yeah, exactly. Like the first two thirds are fine, but it's basically like you're waiting for the finale.
Brian De Palma directed it, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's right. He's a really great director. We should do like a whole podcast just on Brian De Palma sometime. I love that
Oh,
guy.
Blowout, I think might be my favorite movie from him.
Yeah, yeah, that one's fantastic. It's like a modern action film done by Brian De Palma.
Blowout?
Blood is at least the final act is it's the final,
I don't think the final act is an action movie. I
it's like a
mean,
car chase scene through a parade or something. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it.
yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it too. It's just like
I just remember watching that movie, and when it came to the climax, I was thinking, "Wow, this is like reminiscent of modern day action movies, but it was made back."
I'm gonna have to rewatch it now thinking about that because now you've got me really confused about the ending.
There's like a car chase scene through a parade, and,
Well,
what's his name was like running around and stuff, and there's a shootout. It was
I,
awesome.
I think you're building up way too much of like I think the things that you think happened, but just not to the extent that you thought they happened.
There was like Gene Hackman, and he was listening to stuff.
Now you're definitely in the wrong movie.
The funny thing is that I've always thought that the perfect double feature is Blowout and The Conversation. Those two
That's
movies just
such a
for
good
some
movie.
reason they fit so well together.
Yeah.
I always remember the opening to Blowout too. It's one of the greatest opening scenes of all time.
Yes. Yes. It also is one of the greatest endings of any movie ever.
You mean with like the shootout and stuff?
No. No.
I really need to rewatch this movie. It's been a while. I just remember it being really fun.
Okay. Enough about what I've watched. What have you watched?
I watched another variation of the Christmas Carol called A Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's like the best Christmas Carol.
It is the best Christmas Carol. I told you before we even started. I told you I watched the best Christmas Carol. I actually watched this one primarily. We were my wife and I were surfing Netflix, and we came upon a Muppet Christmas Carol, and she had never seen it. She loves the Muppets. We both love the Muppets.
Yeah.
So I pulled it up, and I was shocked to hear that she had never seen it. So we just watched through it again, and the funny thing is that I have extremely fond memories of this as a kid. And this time watching it, I still loved it, but I didn't love it as much as I used to. And I think that things that were funnier to me as a little kid were just kind of amusing this time around. But it's still fantastic. It's like it's not like I watched it and then hated it the second time around. I think the movie works better as kind of a fond childhood memory than it does as an actual movie. But it is fantastic, and most Muppet stuff is, especially from that era.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that I felt the same way about that one and Muppet Treasure Island, which I watched
Oh, I love Muppet Treasure Island.
a few months ago. The funny thing is that I feel like the Muppets went like they've gone through several different phases. Obviously, they had when they first started off with Jim Henson and the Muppet Movie and the Muppet Show and that kind of stuff. And those ones, whenever I rewatch those or the Great Muppet Caper, those ones hold up really, really well for me. Like I rewatch those now, and I think, wow, this is just exactly as I remember as a kid. It's just as witty and funny, and then you also notice jokes that you didn't get as a kid. Whereas stuff like Muppet Treasure Island and A Muppet Christmas Carol, I remember them being as good as a kid, but I watch them now, and it's like they're still good. They're just not as good as the older Muppet movies, and I think it's because I remember everything about them, but nothing more.
Interesting because, well, I mean, like I've seen all the Muppet movies, but I don't know if it's because I was just at a more appropriate age growing up when the that stretch of movies in like the 90s was coming out. It's like Muppet Christmas Carol and Treasure Island. So those are the ones that, I mean, even if they're not the best, are probably the ones that I'll always think of as my favorites. You know?
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like those are the ones that you probably grew up with more. Those are the ones that came out probably when you're a little kid. And same here too with me. I mean, like we're not that far apart in age
No.
difference, like an old keys or anything. But as so it's kind of like I might have the fondest memories of those, but rewatching them in my 20s now, it's kind of like I like the older ones better than the 90s ones. But they're all great. I mean, until you get up to the 2000s, there's really no bad Muppet movies.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know if I have a bias because of these movies or if I like these Muppet movies because of this bias, but I love Gonzo and Rizzo. I think like those are my two favorite Muppet characters. Like you always see like pictures of whenever like famous people visit the Henson workshop, and they always take pictures of like their favorite Muppets. And like, I would never like if they're like, oh, I want to take a picture with Kermit, be like, okay, cool, whatever. But like, if I ever made it to the Henson Studios, I would want a picture with Gonzo and Rizzo. That's really all I care about.
Yeah, I was the exact same way. The one I probably rewatched the most was the Great Muppet Caper, and I think it's Gonzo in that one especially. Just kind of he has the most personality as far as the being a side character, not coming forward in his own movie, kind of like he did with Muppets from Space, but just kind of playing as a bit character. The Great Muppet Caper, I think, used him best that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, in addition to that, I watched another Christmas movie in theaters. Actually, we were showing at my theater nearby recently, so we went to check it out. Die Hard, which
So jealous. I'm so jealous.
it was amazing.
The New Beverly is showing it Christmas Eve, but I'll be out of state. So
Oh man, that sucks.
I'm a
This
big
movie is so good on the big screen. Like the explosions, the sound effects, the music is just booming. It's amazing. And it was even better because like the Muppets, this was my wife's first time seeing it also, and she got to see it in theaters for the first time. I was just so jealous, and it was so much fun. Not really much to say about Die Hard. Fun movie, one of the greatest action movies ever made. Great Christmas movie, so
Yep.
well written, well acted. Enough said. It was great. It was awesome. And then finally, the last one that I watched recently was Flash Gordon.
Ah.
Savior of the universe. Just kind of on a whim. I don't know. I felt like watching something terrible and wonderful in '80s. It's an amazing little film.
So you own it.
Yes, I have it. I have it on Blu-ray.
That's crazy.
So watching that movie in all its HD glory with those terrible green screen effects. The funny thing is that I mean the only thing I'll really say about this movie it's a cult classic. It's fun. But there were two things that stood out to me this time watching it, just kind of watching it just for fun. One is that it never really sunk into me, just the actors that are in this movie.
Oh, like Max von Sydow.
Yeah, Max von Sydow. He plays the main villain, Emperor Ming or whatever, and he's in it. What's his name? James Bond, Hot Fuzz.
Timothy Dalton.
Timothy Dalton. He's in it too. And I'm watching this movie, and I turned to Katie and I asked her like, why would any actor like these guys like why is Max von Sydow in this movie? And she basically said, well, if you're offered to be a chance in this movie, wouldn't you? And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. Probably just a lot of fun to do, you know. I mean, like a little bit of a break from some of their more dramatic and serious stuff.
Yeah.
But also another thing that I noticed is that the film. I'm almost half wondering because the film is based on what 1930s or 1940s TV show that was made based on a comic strip.
Something like that.
Yeah, and I was wondering what prompted this movie to be made in the 80s when it was. And I almost wondered if it's kind of like people today who make Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or G.I. Joe and that kind of stuff. I wonder if some of the filmmakers grew up with Flash Gordon as a kid and they thought, hey, I want to make a new Flash Gordon movie. It'll be awesome. So they make kind of their nostalgia piece. I wonder if Flash Gordon was the nostalgia film of the 80s, much like a lot of our reboots of classic
it was originally George Lucas went to the company that owns the rights to Flash Gordon and tried to remake Flash Gordon. When they wouldn't let him, he decided to make Star Wars. And so the irony then is then Star Wars comes out, it's such a big hit, and then the guys who had the rights to Flash Gordon were like, oh, we should probably make a movie to capitalize on this.
Yeah, which is hilarious because I mean like the movie is just basically pure escapism, but you can see a lot of I don't want to say love, but a lot of kind of fun was put into it. Like you really get that the people who made this movie kind of got what the originals were about, and so they just ran away with the campiness, you know, like the Hawkmen with just their wings just kind of dangling there as they're flying around and stuff. It's great. It's a fun ride.
Yeah.
So that's what I watched this past week, and it was an interesting week. Anyway, I guess we'll move into movie news, where I guess really all we have to do is talk about a few trailers that have come out.
Yeah, especially since we have a couple I think that came out this week, and then we have one big one that we missed because we didn't do a podcast over Thanksgiving.
Yeah, because we were out Thanksgiving.
Yep, exactly, like you do.
Exactly. As you do on Thanksgiving. You go out turkey timing, gobble gobble.
Oh my gosh. Now now I have bad images from Geely in my head.
So, which one do you want to talk about first? Which trailer do you want to talk about
Well,
first?
we should talk about the big one first. The first teaser trailer for Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Oh, did that come out?
I think it did. I mean, it's this small kind of obscure movie that I don't know. It might be a minor hit next year. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I don't know. It didn't pop up on any of the movie news sites I was reading.
Um,
Reading the wrong movie news sites.
yeah. In all serious though, we've already talked about this kind of extensively because I was actually at your place when this trailer came out. We both saw it on the big screen first. We did not we did not watch it online. We waited
I
probably
had to restrain myself so hard.
yeah, it was probably a good 3 or 4 hours. We had to hold off uh,
Yeah.
before we saw it, but it was worth it. The very last shot of the trailer was of the Falcon flying around was perfect on the big screen. Felt like you were on like a roller coaster or something.
Yeah. Watching in theaters, there were it was a plus. Anyway, it was a little bit of a minus, but this isn't so much of a minus. It's just kind of a mild annoyance. But I kind of loved it at the same time. Was the fans' reaction because you and I that morning we both went to different movies
Yes.
to see the trailer specifically. I had a movie that I wanted to see. I hadn't seen the new Hunger Games movie yet, so I went to go see that morning. I chose that morning, so I made sure to see the Star Wars trailer as well.
Yeah, you picked the better movie. Let's just say that much.
And you went to go see
I saw Horrible Bosses too, which was horrible.
Bosses too.
Yeah.
And so entirely different audiences. From what I understand, your audience pretty much had a non-reaction to the trailer, right?
Yeah, I was the only person, with any sort of audible reaction.
Yeah. And then for me there, I'm sitting in Hunger Games. It's not a full theater. It's just sometime in the morning, but there's a good small crowd in the theater. And it's funny because when the trailer first comes up, there's no logos or anything on the screen. You know, it doesn't say Lucasfilm or Disney or anything like that. And it just fades in, and all of a sudden my crowd just goes like, "Woo, yeah!" and that kind of stuff, which is fun. But on the other hand, for me, I'm like really, I try to focus on the trailer. I'm like, "Shh, what if something happens?" But of course, nothing did.
Yeah.
No important dialogue happened until like a good few seconds in. But the best reaction I got was when the Falcon flew over and the John Williams score came up, and the whole crowd just went crazy. It was a lot of fun then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember the last time that I felt like this in the theaters. I mean, I've gotten to see movies I've been really looking forward to and I've gotten really excited about. But watching that trailer, just seeing it unfold on the big screen, was the first time I think I've really gotten a really strong thrill in a while. And just I mean, like even though they didn't show a whole lot, it was just kind of the thought that this is actually happening just kind of dawned on me.
Yeah, that was kind of like yeah. Like in terms of an actual like, there were so many sites that were kind of doing like, oh, let's break down what's in the episode 7 trailer, and the answer is not a lot.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more that goes into it. You know, just that sense of anticipation and like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. Like we've been hearing about this for months. You know, there've been leaks of information or possible photos or whatever. We don't know what to believe or not to believe. But the fact that you actually see something that's official, it's kind of this great moment of just like this is happening. Um, and in true form for a teaser trailer, it leaves you with way more questions than answers. Um, One thing I really liked about the trailer is that, with the exception of the Falcon and then I guess like the X-wings and Tie fighters, none of the original trilogy cast was in the trailer. It was all new faces, and I think that's kind of a strong statement to kind of be like, yeah, we all know that you like old Star Wars, but this is new Star Wars going forward, so we're going to emphasize and put an emphasis on these characters so you get to know them. I just thought that was kind of a bold move on their part because it would have been really easy to do the first trailer have to be really like nostalgic, and I thought for the most part it wasn't. It was kind of like, okay, this is familiar, but here are new characters and situations and stuff that you're gonna have to deal with.
Exactly. One of my favorite things about the trailer was that, I mean, once kind of the emotion of the moment wore off, and and it sunk in that, wow, this is actually happening. I loved how they use familiar imagery. I mean, like you see like the droids, you see Tatooine, you see stormtroopers and that kind of stuff, but they mixed in just enough of the new tech to show you, like you said, this is new Star Wars, this is an old Star Wars, but don't worry, it's still Star Wars. It's not like it's turning into something completely different.
Yeah.
But we got new stuff in there for you. We got a new little droid, looks awesome. We got a new lightsaber, which looks cool, and everything like that. And I don't care. You can break down everything you want. You can complain as much as you want about the couple seconds of footage that we've seen. It looks like they've really captured the spirit of Star Wars really well while moving it in a new direction, which is what I really appreciated about it.
Yeah, it does its job very well for a trailer that only shows about like 30 seconds.
Exactly.
So that's probably as deep as we can go into it right now. I think we can both say that we're excited by it. And while it's probably not the best trailer of the year, it's definitely the one that probably does the best job of getting you excited for the movie that you're going to see, especially one that's not coming out for not even a year. It's still over a year away, a year in like 4 days.
Exactly. So that trailer, it really, it's a trailer that probably got me the most excited when I first saw it. But there's another trailer that came out this past week that
Yep.
made me. I mean, I can't stop watching this trailer. I had to watch it over and over again. I mean, like the Star Wars trailer, we watched it like 5, 10 times the first day, and I've kind of rewatched a couple times since then. But there's one trailer I just have to watch every day. Otherwise, it's like my fix now.
Yep.
Is the Mad Max Fury Road trailer.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
I'm having such a hard time between this trailer for it and the first teaser trailer that they released back in like July, I think.
yeah,
Between these two trailers, one of them is my favorite of the year, just because I, it's just so batshit crazy.
it is. It really is.
There's no other way to describe it.
Well, the funny thing is that I had watched the original the first teaser trailer that came out a while ago. I watched that a couple times when that first came out. I think I wrote an article on it originally about the Mad Max films when that one came out. But then when this one came out, I just couldn't stop watching it. There's just so much going on. It's hard to process that this movie exists in our world.
Yeah, it's like it's so chaotic and full of adrenaline and whatever. But the one description I wouldn't have expected to be giving it, after watching it, was that it's a very beautiful trailer. Like
It is.
George Miller like somehow takes all this crazy chaos and destruction and turns it into like art, like poetry.
Exactly.
You know, my
I love
favorite.
the way he uses music in this thing, and the
Oh, yeah.
music is
I, I
phenomenal.
think I think the use of classical music goes a long way to kind of um, adding that beauty to it. But like my favorite shot in the whole trailer, I'm gonna kind of elaborate on something else. My least favorite thing about this trailer is the money shot they use at the end, which is this kind of CG whirlwind, whatever. It's really cool, but it kind of feels empty because it is all CG spectacle, especially compared to the rest of the trailer, which is all, or I shouldn't say all, but for the most part looks practical. And from what I've heard, they really were doing all these stunts and blowing up cars in the desert. So my favorite shot in the trailer, though, is I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's Mad Max or just another character is on like some pole, and they basically are flying up and kind of rotating clockwise through the frame, and you just watch as behind them all these vehicles are just blowing up in like slow motion, and it's just so beautiful. Like I was like, that should have been the money shot trailer, or the big money shot for the trailer, not the CG sandstorm explosion, which is still cool, but just kind of feels a little emptier and shallower than everything else in the trailer.
Yeah, I'm really happy because it seems like George Miller hasn't lost the soul of Mad Max's world with all the characters in the crazy costumes and masks and
Yeah.
Nicholas Holt in this trailer. I
Totally,
never
that's
thought I'd
ridiculous.
see him like that.
Yeah,
Um,
this one, like, if just based on footage alone, like if it wasn't for the fact that I'm a much bigger Star Wars fan than I am a Mad Max fan. If I wasn't, as big a Tarantino fan as I am, as I am a Mad Max fan, like Mad Max just based on the trailer, would be like the movie I'm looking forward to the most. But as of right now, uh, I think it's like number 3 on my list of movies I'm really looking forward to next year. And there's an entire possibility, although very low, that it could beat, that it could be at the top next year if it pays off, if the promise of the trailer pays off in the movie. That's just like a huge accomplishment right there. Because as from what we've kind of been hearing, is it's basically a 90 minute or 2 hour chase movie with very little dialogue, and that's a hard thing to pull off without either numbing the audience or just kind of making it feel empty. So I really hope they pull it off because these trailers have just been incredible.
Exactly. Hopefully, when the first teaser came out, I was saying I hope it's next year's Dread. If it lives up to this new trailer, it's going to be much even better than Dread.
Yeah,
So,
I hope it does
um,
better than Dread 2 at the box office.
oh, I pray it does. I want to
Yeah,
see more of these movies if they keep turning them out like this. If it turns out as it looks.
yeah.
So, are there any other trailers we want to touch on before going on to the main topic?
I can't think of any. I
Yeah. We just had
anything.
a few nostalgic trailers out. The Jurassic Park trailer, everyone's seeing that one, or Jurassic World trailer that came out. What
Oh yeah,
else came out?
Paul and I talked about it on the last podcast,
You
but
talked about that one last time.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So anyway, I guess we can move on to Ridley Scott's Exodus: Gods and Kings. Um, so before we talk about actually what we thought about it, I just want to touch upon the reaction so far because we're recording this. It's been a few days since it was released, a couple days since it was released,
Hmm.
and it's looking like it's not getting terribly good word of mouth. It seems like it's actually getting pretty negative reviews in
Yeah, I
general.
think on Rotten Tomatoes, it is currently the second lowest rated Ridley Scott movie. The only one that's lower is a Good Year or The Good Year, whatever. I haven't seen that one, so
I haven't even heard of that one. And most people that I've been talking to, because I work at a movie theater, I talk with a lot of people there about movies and such. A lot of them are pretty negative on the movie. They don't seem to like it. So it seems like at this point it's a pretty popular movie to hate.
yes,
From what I've seen.
yeah, it doesn't help the whole whitewashing controversy. That's
Yeah,
been
which I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. I have plenty to say about that. But yeah. I mean, this movie even before it came out, it was surrounded by a lot of controversy. A lot of people were kind of pessimistic about it. And then when it came out, nobody seems to like it. So yeah. I think it's this year's popular to hate movie.
hmm
That's right now.
That is until The Hobbit comes out next week.
Yeah, but The Hobbit already. I mean, like you'll have just as many people hating on it, but that movie already has a kind of a following. I mean, like even Lord of the Rings and Hobbit fans and Peter Jackson fans are gonna watch it and love it. I mean, like you go on Facebook feeds, they release a new image. It's just a bunch of people saying, "OMG, Benedict Cumberbatch as a dragon is hot" and stuff.
Well, yeah, he's hot because he's the dragon. You know,
Exactly. Oh,
Reed
oh,
Spike.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Whereas Exodus doesn't really have that following because it can't have that following. What you have all the Moses fangirls. OMG.
Well, I mean, isn't that the Jewish and Christian religions are
I guess.
the Moses fangirls?
OMG, hottest Moses since Charlton Heston. All caps. Um, but anyway, so we both saw this movie this past weekend.
Yep.
I gotta say, I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. I don't know if it was because I went in with like, low expectations or, I mean, I'll admit it. Like, I'm kind of a huge sucker for biblical epics and stuff like that. Like, Noah is still one of my favorite movies of the year, and while I think Noah is a way better movie than Exodus, like I think if this is the second best religious movie of the year, that's not too bad, you know, especially since we don't get a lot of them or a lot of good ones
Yeah.
anyway.
And they're both very different movies too. I've always been joking around this whole year. Why haven't people been complaining about the race issue with Exodus? So I was like, well, why were they complaining about Noah? And trying to compare it to Noah just kind of jokingly, but they're really they're completely different animals. Noah is a more interesting, different take on the Noah story.
Hmm.
I feel like that one was better, more well received also when it first came out. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like people have better things to say about Noah. And it's new, it's fresh, it's different, it's interesting, it's well done. It's just a totally different kind of take on a Bible story.
Well,
That's
I think if we're talking about the comparison between Noah and Exodus, Noah is a way more divisive movie. So you get the extremes there. You get people who really loved it and really hated it. I feel like with Exodus, it's not so much that people are hating on the movie, but it's that it's kind of a very much a meh. You know, it's a very
yeah,
sad meh for a
yeah,
lot of people.
exactly.
Um,
But then Exodus is just kind of it's more or less a straight up Moses movie. Like it doesn't bring a whole lot new to the table. It has a couple of really interesting twists
mhm.
on the Moses story that I really really liked actually.
And
But
that's kind of interesting because that that's both my one complaint with the movie and then my one thing that I kind of really enjoyed with it because on the surface it is very much a beat by beat. You know, oh, this is the story we've seen told in Ten Commandments and Prince of Egypt and all that stuff. Um, and like every other Moses movie, it ends right after he gets the Ten Commandments when there's still like half another. There's a whole other story after
exactly.
after the end of that. Um, but that being said, it still does enough unique, and I think they're all really like small differences and changes, but I think they add up to kind of keep you engaged. The way I kind of describe it is that it's a very familiar story told in an unfamiliar way.
Yeah, yeah. It is. It's a. I don't want to say it's a modernizing of the Moses story, but it's telling it kind of with modern audiences in mind and sensibilities, and it's kind of showing them, all right, this is the same story that you've seen a million times over, but we're going to be retelling it in this century style or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. It's almost like you have a campfire story and you're telling it throughout the generations, and each generation has their own take on the story. That's what I feel like Exodus is basically.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and it works too. The whole whitewashing thing, that's been something I've been kind of annoyed with from the beginning. Not the actual casting of the white actors, but I think people are really playing up the race issue as a bigger deal than it is. I mean, as
Well,
far
I
as I'm
mean,
concerned, it's Hollywood. They've always cast white actors in these lead roles. Why should this one have been any different?
yeah, I mean, this is a way more complicated issue than we probably have time for on the podcast. Like, I mean, I think they should be going out of their way, you know, to try to cast these types of actors like an actor even though he's not Egyptian an actor like Oscar Isaac looks closer to what a biblical Moses or Ramesses would have looked like than Christian Bale or Joel Edgerton. And so I think it's all small steps. I will say that the whitewashing. I mean, it does bother me on like some level, but in terms of like the actual movie, like the movie started, I was like, oh, it's Christian Bale, and then it kind of like I didn't think about it the rest of the movie,
Yeah,
which I think is more a comment on just like the skill of the movie that I was able to get engaged with it that I didn't even think about it afterward.
yeah. Um, I think my two favorite things about this movie that the movie did differently from the other Moses stories that we've seen is for one thing, the way that they display the 10 plagues and some of the miracles is as natural disasters, which was really interesting to me. I kind of heard beforehand that they were doing something like that, but actually see it, I was really curious how they'd play it off, and they tried to explain kind of like how one plague affects the next one, affects the next one, and how
Yeah,
these
I
things can
really like
naturally
that.
evolve.
I really like that, especially because the first plague starts with a croc attack, which we don't have enough croc attacks in movies anymore.
And we're
So
talking like hundreds of crocs here, thousands of crocs in this scene.
yeah, that was pretty awesome. Although it did feel like the plagues. I mean, there are a lot of them, and it did feel like at a certain point they did kind of drag on a little too long. Like that was almost a bit where you could have gone slightly more montagey and could have sped things up. But on a whole, I really did enjoy the plagues. I kind of like. I think that if we're comparing it to Noah again, this was kind of the equivalent of like the creation scene in Noah, where the creation scene is kind of like, oh, God does his whole creation thing, but there's also kind of room for evolution in that story. So it's kind of like you get both sides of, you get science and faith, working together. And that was kind of the same thing here. It's like obviously it's the hand of God that's doing all this stuff, but at the same time, it's presented in a very naturalistic way.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's also funny because the it's not saying that. I mean, like it's not trying to take a full-on scientific version of the story either. It's not saying like, oh, God didn't have any hand in this. It was all just these natural disasters and a crazy man who thinks it was God doing it. But it is kind of just blending the two as saying like, oh yeah, God was doing this, but he's deciding to do it through these ways instead of something crazy spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, with the exception of the killing of the firstborn, because there's no way you can naturally explain that. So
Yeah.
they go full out spiritual.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was funny because for a lot of the movie, I was almost half wondering if they're going to play this angle where it's going to be ambiguous as to whether Moses was actually talking to God and whether like these things were just happening coincidentally.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
because most of the movie, whenever he's talking to God, the audience can see him and that kind of stuff. But then you see someone else is watching him. And he's just like a crazy guy, just like yelling at nothing.
Well, I think it's important to know that the person who's watching Moses is Joshua, played by Aaron Paul, and um, one of my main complaints of the movie is that there are definitely two. There might be a third actor, but I can't think of who else it would be. There are a couple actors in this movie who are like woefully underused. Aaron Paul as Joshua is one of them, um, and like the Joshua character is like a really cool character, and yet he doesn't get a lot of lines of dialogue until the very end of the movie, and spends most of his time kind of like poking his head out behind like a rock.
With like a big bushy beard.
um, but then probably the worst example of an underused actor in this movie is Sigourney Weaver. Like there was no reason for her to be in this movie.
She's just kind of hanging out in the background in a couple scenes. And that's it.
Like there's got to be a director's cut coming in the future. With
Oh
no,
yeah, oh
with
yeah,
no,
with like more of the Egyptian stuff going on.
yeah,
Yeah, the cast of this movie, this had a really interesting cast.
yes.
I was not expecting to see John Turturro as Pharaoh in this movie. I almost didn't recognize him for the
Well,
first couple scenes.
here's the thing: is I remember when he got cast and they said he was going to play the Pharaoh, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be ridiculous, and I'm not going to be able to like pay attention. But surprisingly, like he plays it like kind of nobly, and and kind of in such a way that you kind of just like go with it.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I mean, like the funny thing is that I've gotten used to picturing Totoro as kind of this over top, almost hamming up the camera with his facial expression sort of thing. But he plays this off very, yeah, like you said, nobly. The funny thing though is that if he was playing a parody of the Pharaoh, I feel like it would be the exact same performance, but it would work in either a parody or a serious telling of the story.
That's very true. Someone who is pretty much playing a parody is Ben Mendelsohn as the Egyptian viceroy.
Oh my god, he was probably one of my favorite side characters.
Yeah, like Ben Mendelsohn's one of my favorite character actors working today, but his I don't even know where to start with this character.
I think my favorite moment in the movie that he had was when Moses is going to visit his workshop or whatever, where he's keeping the slaves and he's investigating them, and yeah, and the guy's like, what, are you displeased with me? Is there any way that I can please you? It's like the look he gives him. It's just the funniest thing.
It's so like it's so not subtle of what he's hinting at.
Exactly. But the funny thing is that his scenes earlier, you're watching him, you're like, this guy's acting a little feminine. I don't know if they're going with this or maybe it's just me. But then that one line can cement like, oh, this is where they're going with this character.
Yeah.
He was great. John Turturro was great. The funniest thing about Aaron Paul was that the very first time you see him, He's being whipped by he's a slave. When we first see him, he's being whipped by an Egyptian guard, and just kind of the look he's giving is I think it's meant to come off as defiant, but it almost looks like he's just angrily enjoying the whipping or something
Yeah,
along
he
those
looks like
lines.
he's possessed or something like that.
Yeah. And I first saw that, I was like, oh, look, it's Jesse from Breaking Bad. I recognize that guy. It's Aaron Paul. And then, like, the rest of the movie, he has this huge, big, bushy beard, and I couldn't barely recognize him except for those eyes. Um,
Yeah, he's a
yeah,
character.
great cast.
He's a
Great
character
cast.
I played up more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, like you said, most of these actors they really needed more screen time. Sigourney Weaver wasn't given a whole much to work with. John Turturro was probably given the most time out of any of the side characters, but even he wasn't given a whole lot of time. Um, was that Rooney Mara playing Miriam, or was that someone else? Because that looked like Rooney Mara to me.
No, it'd be funny if it was Rooney Mara because she would go from a whitewashed Egyptian to a whitewashed Indian in Pan next year.
That would be hilarious. Okay, I'm looking up the actress on IMDb. Wow, she does look a lot like Rooney Mara though. Um, yeah, the another thing that I really liked about this movie was the way they portrayed God, actually, which again is very different. Was
Well, it's interesting to point out that it's not a direct portrayal of God, but rather a messenger. They kind of
Yeah,
make a point.
yeah, exactly. But like when they're talking to each other, it's like he's talking directly to God, but it's like through this messenger character, or whatever, who's a little boy,
Yeah,
basically, like an angry little boy. Who always looks like he's like slightly annoyed, which is kind of how people are reacting around him. Like, oh my gosh, you guys screwed this up again.
yeah. He kind of creeped me out. Like, not quite on the level of the little demon kids in the Passion of the Christ, but very close.
Yeah, exactly. Well. Every scene that you see him in, he just looks very like his eyebrows are furrowed, and he looks kind of, well, you're not doing a good enough job. Here, let me do it my way. Or yeah, it's and he's very not condescending, but just kind of annoyed, basically. I don't know. There's no other word for it for me,
Yeah.
really. Um, I really liked it though because Moses is just kind of following him around and doing whatever he says. But then he comes to the 10 plagues. And he's like, all right, your little revolution isn't working, Moses. So I'm just gonna take over from here on out. Just watch me work. And they do like the 10 plagues, and Moses is like, okay, please stop this. This is just too much.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing that they do. There's a point early on where um, they talk about what the definition of Israelite is, and it's he who wrestles with God. And it's kind of interesting then that the last scene is Moses and this messenger basically talking. And it's funny is the lines of dialogue. I feel like you could take them out and give them to like two characters who are sitting on a porch drinking beer together because the messenger is basically like, we argue, we don't agree all the time, but I still like you, you still like me.
And that was my favorite part. One of my, well, again, like I said this for a couple of scenes, but that was the scene that I really liked because if you want to take it from kind of a thematic standpoint, it was in every other Moses movie we see Moses just kind of does whatever God wants without questioning it, and he's like, yeah, this is the right thing. You guys better wise up, otherwise we're gonna murderize all you Egyptians. But then in this one it ends, and he's like, you know what? I don't always agree with you. I'll trust you. I'll do whatever you say, and that kind of stuff. And we get along just fine. But we may not agree all the time. But we still understand each other.
Yeah, I kind of liked how they start the Moses character off as a skeptic, and not even just a skeptic of the Hebrew religion, but also of Egyptian religion as well. That being said, the one downside to that angle on the character is there's a moment about halfway through the movie where Moses is talking to his wife about their son, and it's such like a scene that feels way too modern for this movie and is very on the nose, where they're basically like, his wife's like, oh, why don't we teach our son about our faith? And then Moses is like, oh, he should trust himself. He can decide when he's older. And it's like, I feel like this isn't a conversation that people in ancient Egypt of either religion would ever have,
Yeah. It is. I agree with you there. I mean, it made sense in the movie, but I think it only made sense in the movie because it was a modern movie.
Yeah.
um. So yeah. I mean, like, overall, I I really enjoyed this movie. Again, it's kind of a straight up adaptation of the Moses story. It's got some silly stuff in there, but I don't feel like it's distracting or negative or in any way. And again, like a lot of the side characters and some of these moments are kind of laughable, but I didn't feel like they were necessarily meant to be serious or anything like that. You know, does that make any
Yeah,
sense?
I thought it was very much like an intentional homage to the 1950s big biblical epics, which were really colorful and really kind of unintentionally hilarious. And I feel like this one is kind of intentionally camping things up occasionally as kind
Yeah,
of an homage to them, which I mean, some people would say, this movie's backwards, which is like why all the whitewashing and stuff like that. But you can also kind of look at it as as a big homage to those earlier movies, and in that context, it works perfectly fine.
so whitewashing aside, why do you think this movie is getting kind of the meh or negative feedback that people are giving it now?
I mean, it is kind of the whole thing that we were talking about earlier, where it is the same story beat by beat. I mean, it does change some things, but for a lot of people, it might not be enough to justify retelling.
Yeah, yeah, it shows the exact same things we've seen 100 times over in other Moses movies. It just does a couple twists on a couple of different things, but it still does the exact same things basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, is that really enough to make people walk out of it saying like, oh my gosh, that wasn't a very good movie, or is it or is that really why people are coming out with it with more of a negative attitude than a positive one?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot. You know, the whitewashing does feed into it, like the controversy. Like people might not be able to overlook that. People might also not be able to overlook the fact that Ridley Scott, his last couple movies have been kind of hit and miss.
Yeah,
Uh,
The Counselor.
yeah, I mean, like I Counselor more than most, but I'm still kind of in the middle on it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. It's just a really interesting movie. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people are turned off by the little bits of camp in there too that we were just talking about also because I mean again there's not a whole lot in there but there were moments I was watching the movie where the audience was kind of snickering. You kind of felt like it was, and they weren't snickering because they thought this movie, those scenes were done intentionally, but because they were just kind of like, oh my gosh, look at that goofy headpiece. Can't believe they put that in a modern day movie.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I mean, kind of if I had to describe my reaction to it, I'd say I was pleasantly surprised. Like it's not the greatest biblical movie ever. It's not the greatest movie of the year. It's not whatever. But it was a pleasantly surprising, entertaining movie, and I mean I'd watch it again. If I have the
yeah,
opportunity.
yeah, same here.
Um,
So yeah. The party in the Red Sea was done really interesting too, along the same lines as the seven plague or the 10 plagues.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of underwhelming compared to what people kind of perceive as the parting of the Red Sea, but I think it fits in line with everything that's come before. And then it kind of the parting of the Red Sea isn't as exciting as it collapsing back on itself.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because I'm watching it, I was like, oh, are they gonna do like a straight up party of the Red Sea? And then no, they didn't. They did kind of a naturalistic thing. I was like, oh, that's a little underwhelming. But then they paid back with it with the chariots racing, through the waters as the water's coming back and that kind of stuff. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we both like the movie.
Yeah.
Would definitely recommend it. I mean, not too highly, but I think just enough. People
Yeah.
will hopefully enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean it's not amazing or anything, but I mean if you want a solid Moses movie, a solid modern day Moses movie, I'd say definitely check it out. It has enough going for it that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So cool. Um, that's all we got for this week right now. What do we have coming out next week? Anything?
The Hobbit.
Oh, The Hobbit, that movie.
Yeah.
That movie, Hobbit movie's coming out.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure we'll have more of a conversation on the Hobbit movies when we talk about that one. But
We'll have to make sure all three of us are on here for that one.
um, what was that?
I said we'll have to make sure all three of us are on it for that one.
We will. That's gonna be a big one. That's gonna be that's just before Christmas too, basically. Maybe that'll be our first
Yeah,
one.
that'll probably be our big end of the year one for the most part.
And then we move into Oscar season.
Sweet. but not really.
Yeah. So anyway, you can find us on our website, the-letterbox.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus. If you just search the Letterbox, I'm sure you'll find us. I don't know. Paul's better at that part than I am.
Also, you should all subscribe to Film Illiterates. It is awesome.
Oh yeah. We have a new web series also that we started out. Just search Film Illiterates on YouTube. We post our episodes on theletterbox.com. It's kind of a new thing. Fellow writer for the Letterbox, Alex and I have been doing it on a bi-weekly basis. If you check out the new episode coming out this next Thursday, which is going to be the what is it? The 15th, the 14th, whatever of December. Basically this Thursday, the 18th is what it is. So Thursday the 18th, we have a new episode. Nick is actually guest starring in that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. What's that?
I said I guest starred in the last one, not this one.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting so confused. Okay, Nick started the last one. Just go to YouTube, search Film Illiterates, you'll find it. It's a lot of fun. We have a new one that's a tribute to The Hobbit coming out this next week. We talk about older, kind of more obscure and cult films. So check that out next Thursday, and yeah, that's all I got.
All right.
Alrighty, you guys all have a good one.
Take care, everyone.